welcome to this brand new episode of Newsmakers, the show where we bring to you spectacular personalities and their success stories from different walks of life. Because at Newsmakers, we aspire to inspire you. My dear lovely audience, I'm your host Simran, and I'm really delighted to bring to you yet another dynamic guest on our sets today. He is the former IAS officer and CEO and founder of Language and Learning Foundation. Please allow me to welcome Dr. Dhir Jhingran on the sets of Newsmakers.
Thank you, Simran.
A very warm welcome to you, sir. We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you. So am I. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. So I would like to start with this million-dollar question, which is you are an IAS officer, a former IAS officer. You must have had a failure and success in life. Reaching to this level must have been, a tipsy-turvy for you as well. Please tell us about your journey of life.
Right. So let me say what I'm most happy about in, let's say, about 35, 36 years of work that I've done. The fact that I've had the opportunity and privilege of working in primary education and making a small contribution to improving primary education has been very satisfying. And I have been able to work at the district, state and national levels, both within and outside the government. That's been very rewarding. What I'm not so happy about is that even after 3 decades, I still find that primary education quality is not that great and a lot of children are not learning enough. So that's something that I don't feel great about.
So you were an IAS officer. What attracted you to be here in the primary education sector?
Yeah, IAS officers are supposed to be generalists, work in the industry sector and agriculture and all of those. I was attracted to education quite early in my career. I remember when I was just 3 years into my career in a district, I chanced upon a lot of these youth clubs in a remote district in Assam, and I found most of the youth actually playing carom through the day and worked towards mobilizing them to see how they could contribute to get out of school children into school and work on non-formal education. Later, I was district collector in a district where there was insurgency and violence, ethnic conflict actually. And we did a large literacy campaign which brought peace and harmony there. Slowly, I got really attracted to school education. I used to visit schools and find that children are quiet, passive. The teacher does most of the speaking. They don't seem to understand what's happening in the classroom. They were copying most of the time from the blackboard or repeating in chorus after the teacher. Something didn't seem right. And slowly I decided to work in education. My resolve became stronger. And I took postings in the education sector within the government. I was project director of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, principal secretary of education, and also director in the Ministry of Education. So that's how I just evolved to continue in the education sector. And then as you become senior in the IAS, you've got to do various jobs. And when I found, when I was about 50 years old, and I found that I have to work in agriculture or other sectors, I knew my heart is in education and decided to actually quit the job and then set up the Language and Learning Foundation because I decided the best way of continuing to impact the education sector is to set up a non-profit and then work with the education system to improve children's learning at scale. In 2015, I remember we started with a grant of 15 lakh rupees, one employee. I did not have a salary for 2 years. We used to work out of my home and cafes. Cafe Coffee Day got a lot of business out of our meetings there. So that was the starting, but we were very confident that we definitely want to make an impact at scale. And there is a big opportunity because there is a huge issue of children's learning. That's how it all started. And now, of course, we've grown much bigger and we are impacting work in 8 states.
Oh, super. So this is how you incepted Language and Learning Foundation. So like you saw kids being an IAS officer, my dear audience, you have to look at it. He was a former IAS officer and his passion came out to this level that he established language and learning foundation for children. Now here there's a very important question which comes into my mind. Now what role does foundation, like kids foundation is very very important right from those primary age. Now what role does a foundation learning play in children's life, like as an overall educational journey? Please tell us about that.
Yeah. So what is now called foundational learning, it's also called foundational literacy and numeracy. So early skills of language and mathematics. For example, a child should be able to read fluently with comprehension, to be able to write independently, to be able to express themselves orally, and also perform basic mathematical operations, addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. This is called foundational learning. These are very important because they are a basis or almost a gateway to all future learning. Unless these skills are developed well, children will not be able to succeed in later school years.
Absolutely.
Also, it's very important to remember that a child's brain development happens in the earliest years. It's almost complete by the age of 8 years. And therefore, it's very important to work well with children, have a great education in the early years of schooling. And that's why the foundational years are so important. And we decided that our focus will be on foundational learning.
So here, like for my audience here, especially the parents who have younger kids, those who are about to start their life and their educational journey. Now here we get to know from Dr. Dhir that it is very very important for us to have their foundation strong.
Yes.
Like right from this primary age, it's very important. Now these days we see there are a lot of pedagogies that we see, a different way of teaching. There's a lot that we see here in the system, in the education system, but still, now the recent AASER report shows that there is low learning levels amongst the age group of 14 to 18-year-olds. Now, what do you think about what could be the reason behind this?
Right, it is very distressing. As you mentioned, the ASER report 2023, 14 to 18-year-old kids that were surveyed, 25% of the kids could not read even a class 2 level text. That's really sad. The earlier ASER report of 2022 said that about 75% children in class 3 cannot do simple subtraction problems. So there is a learning crisis in that sense. It's a new term has been coined which is called learning poverty, like income poverty, learning poverty. So those children who even by the age of 10 cannot read a simple text, they're called learning poor in a way.
Correct.
And in India the estimate is about 55% children at the age 10 or between the ages of 6 to 10 are learning poor, cannot even read a simple text. So there is a big crisis out there. The reasons are many, but here I'd like to just highlight 2 or 3 of them. The first, I think it's most important to focus on early childhood education, even from the age of 3 and at home from 0 to 3 as well. As you said, early stimulus is very important. Parents can provide that stimulus. And then 3 to 6 years early childhood education of good quality is very crucial. So that's one very important area. The second is, I was mentioning earlier of how children are passive in classrooms. The teacher does most of the talking.
Correct.
That must change. Children should become active in the classrooms. They should be reading, asking questions. So the teaching and learning process really needs to change. That's very important. The third important area, if I would like to highlight, is about how parents need to be integrally involved with their children's education. How does the school and the parents and the community come together and parents are able to support their children's learning. So all this needs to happen and happen at scale because the problem is so huge. So it is a very comprehensive set of factors that need to be influenced to improve the current learning crisis.
So, Dr. Dhir, when you say this crisis is happening now, is it in some parts of the country, or is it like the poor people who are like underprivileged, unable to give education to their kids, or it's in whole? Because I do see COVID has really made kids, go under shed, like they aren't willing to learn. So what could be the reason? Like, what do you think is?
So the crisis is quite widespread in the country. Yes, of course, the more disadvantaged and underprivileged are worse off. They are doing less well. The performance is definitely much worse than others. There are also pockets in the country where children's learning is lower than other parts of the country. As I said, the factors are diverse. It has to do with parental awareness about learning. It has to do about how schools are functioning. In some parts of the country, even the instructional time in school is very low. For example, in a state in India, we were calculating last year the schools functioned for only 150 days. So there's very low instructional time.
Correct.
So a variety of factors, but it affects the poorest and those who are most disadvantaged the most, because sometimes they're irregular in attendance in schools. They also get neglected in the classroom. So while there is a crisis of learning in the country, there is also a huge disparity. So even in a classroom, you'll find that some children are learning at adequate levels, but in the same classroom, there will be about 20% kids who are not even achieving basic levels of learning. They're not able to read simple words. So there's a lot of disparity, and therefore it's very important in foundational learning to focus on equity. How do all children learn? That's very important.
So it has to be a teacher focused on each and every kid.
Yes.
And here, my dear audience, and especially those parents who are watching this show, it's very important for all of us to know that everything goes hand in hand. As a parent and as a teacher, both of you have to start from those former years for your little ones to get to understand what is language all about. Now here I want to come to this question. Now how does the use of mother tongue play a role in children's life? Like, there are a lot of places kids have been told that there is only Hindi or English language, but then there could be kids from different places.
Yes.
So how does it play, mother tongue plays a role now?
Yeah, India is such a diverse country in terms of languages. I mean, the census documented more than 1,000 mother tongues.
Correct.
Not all of them can be used as mediums of instruction, but there's so much research evidence to say that if children study through a language that they're familiar with, there will be better comprehension, there will be better learning. It's quite obvious. If I was taught when I was young in a language that I didn't understand, obviously it'll all be incomprehensible to me.
Absolutely.
So that's very important. The other factor why a familiar language or a mother tongue is important is that it is a language where children feel comfortable in. It helps boost their self-confidence and self-esteem. And self-confidence and good emotional adjustment in the classroom is the basis of learning. So that's really crucial, that if they find a familiar language that they're understanding, they can relate to, it helps in learning everything else. It helps in learning additional languages as well. English, for example. In large parts of the country, in rural areas, English teaching is not great.
Right.
But if we were to develop the strong foundation of one language, then it becomes easier to learn other languages and also learn other subjects well. So in a way, using a familiar language of the child in the classroom is absolutely crucial to improving foundational learning.
I totally agree to it, because for us also it's more comfortable when we are speaking in our native language, the language that I'm comfortable with. Here in our country, we do see that the educational system is improvising for sure, but there are a lot of things that is to be done. Now, what is, according to you, how a primary education can be, we can have some betterment here?
Right. So again, many things.
Yes.
But if I was to say a few only, I would say prioritize basic education. The countries that we call Asian tigers today, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, they all had one thing in common. In the 70s and 80s, they put in a lot of resources and attention to primary education. And that is how they actually developed very quickly. So prioritize basic education, very important. Also a focus, as I said earlier, on early childhood education, where children are 3, 4, 5 years old. Their brain is developing at the fastest speed to provide a good stimulus to them, and a high quality education is really crucial at that time. The third is to focus on the teaching and learning process that happens in the classroom, that children should be active, they should be speaking, reading, asking questions, rather than remaining passive. And how do we change this across tens of thousands of classrooms? That's most important. And this, I think, the education system that we have really needs a lot of change to be able to ensure that primary education becomes a priority. And every classroom, we find that the way teaching and learning is happening is actually transformed. And as I said, parents, of course, are integral to it. And how do parents get involved in children's learning? Often you find the school to be very distant from parents, especially parents in rural, remote areas. They're not able to engage with the school and with the children's learning. They may even be illiterate in some cases, but every parent is nowadays very concerned about their children's education. That awareness has come. So how do we encourage them to contribute to children's learning? That holds the key to improving primary education at scale.
So here, do you also see those people, those parents who are illiterate? No, are there some kind of learnings for them also, for, you know, they learn and they also happen to teach their kids? There's kind of a system there as well?
Yes, I think it's important that young parents, at least, 20 to 45, if they're not literate, we must make a strong effort, especially for mothers, female literacy, to be ensuring that they acquire basic literacy skills. But what we have seen is that even parents who are themselves not highly literate, they understand the value of education now, because they know this is the pathway to children getting out of the cycle of poverty, and they want their children to do that. And they can do small things. For example, they can provide a space to children to study when they come back from school. Even if the house or the home is small, they can do that. They can ask some questions. What did you learn today? Aaj kya sikha? School mein kya hua? So in small ways, parents can support the children's learning. They can go to school in a parent-teacher meeting and ask about how the child is doing. So there are small ways in which parents can definitely contribute to their children's learning.
So wonderfully said. And here I have to urge all my listeners here. Now here we do have people around us, those who work for us, like our house workers, and people who are illiterate, they aren't educated. How we can help them, educate them, is tell them to be more considerate with their kids. Push them to make their kids learn during their very, very primary age. We can do best for our nation by also telling them that, education is very, very, very important. Now, my last question would be, how optimistic you are about the overall educational system? Do you see it improving? And what would be your feedback or your say in this?
I'm an eternal optimist. I've been in this for 35 years, and I think many good things have happened in the basic education sector in India. Access has improved. There are a large number of new schools, new teachers have been appointed, enrollments have increased, but as we discussed, learning is still a challenge. But I see that change is happening, and happening in different parts of the country. The challenge is that it should happen consistently over time in tens of thousands of schools. We have 50 lakh teachers in the elementary education sector. How do we ensure that all these classrooms have a very different way in which children are learning? And this is something that we need to have a very consistent focus on this if we want that learning should improve in the next decade, let's say.
So very well. And lastly, I would like to have that advice from you for the parents as to what good they can do as a normally, like with their kids on a regular basis. Any specific advice that you have for them?
Yeah, I would say that help your children learn, provide them enough space an opportunity to learn, support them after school also, but don't just be focused on academic learning, just reading and writing and doing mathematics or whatever subjects. It's very important to recognize that a child needs to develop in a holistic manner all aspects, games and sports, music, craft. So just ensure that you're supporting the child with whatever talent she has, and you're encouraging them to get and realize their best potential. That's most important.
What a wonderful advice that we got here. And my dear audience, now that we know what we have to do with our little ones, we have to encourage them with whatever they are best at. So from now on, see and give your best time with your kids. I'm sure you must be giving, but from now on also prioritize their primary education. It's very, very important. Thank you so much, Dr. Dhir. We are absolutely enlightened and so happy to have you here on the sets of Newsmakers. Thank you for being a part of our show.
Thank you, Simran. Delighted to be here. Thank you so much.